The headlines at this hour: in Geneva, North Korea tries to have the UN resolutions against its human rights abuses thrown out. South Korea calls on the regime to end its crimes against humanity. Speaking before the U.S. Congress, Israel's prime minister denounces a nuclear deal currently being negotiated between the U.S. and Iran. The U.S. president says the prime minister's speech offers nothing new. And the income growth rate for people in their 20s and 30s in Korea rises in the 0% range. These stories and more just ahead. Glad to have you with us. You're watching Early Edition at 6, live from Seoul. I'm Laah Hyun-kyung.
And I'm Daniel Choy. Thank you for joining us. Well, North Korea once again demands the UN Human Rights Council drop its resolutions against Pyongyang's alleged crimes against humanity.
Well, the regime's foreign minister says the core testimony in a UN human rights report was based on lies of criminals. Here's Arirang's Hwang Sung-hee.
North Korea's Foreign Minister Lee Soo-young used his platform to denounce a landmark UN report on Pyongyang's human rights abuses that was published last year. Addressing the UN Human Rights Council in Geneva on Tuesday, Lee called for the resolutions based on the report to be revoked immediately, since the core testimonies have been proven to be false.
The act of cooking up the report of the Commission of Inquiry based on lies of a few such criminals is itself a mistake, which is completely against the aspiration of the UN for civilization and the rule of law.
The recent backtracking by prominent defector Shin Dong-hyuk on the details of his life in a North Korean prison camp fueled the regime's attempts to discredit the entire UN report. Lee said the world body should also look into the CIA's harsh treatment of terror suspects.
The UN must put an end to its selectiveness on dealing with human rights issues by listing the U.S. brutality of torture as an urgent issue.
But North Korea's claims were met with strong calls by South Korea to immediately end its human rights violations.
We call on the DPRK to immediately take concrete and sincere steps so that its people can carry on a normal, dignified life.
At a separate conference, the North Korean diplomat called the ongoing joint military drills between Washington and Seoul a rehearsal for a nuclear war against Pyongyang and threatened to launch a preemptive strike on the U.S. if necessary. Hwang Sung-hee, Arirang News.
Well, Director of U.S. National Intelligence James Clapper says he is confident that North Korea and North Korea alone was the culprit behind the devastating cyber attack on Sony Pictures last year.
Well, this was during an interview with U.S. network PBS on Tuesday, where he also reiterated that countering cyber threats is Washington's top priority in terms of national security. Clapper flew to Pyongyang in November to secure the release of 2 American detainees, also said he doesn't see change on the horizon for North Korea, although he did feel a slight optimism from young people he saw there.
Well, South Korean civic groups are demanding an apology from a senior U.S. official for making controversial comments. Now, protesters gathered in front of the U.S. Embassy in Korea today, saying remarks made by U.S. Undersecretary of State Wendy Sherman last week targeted Korea and China and let Japan get away with whitewashing its past atrocities. Sherman's statement that political leaders should not exploit nationalist feelings and, quote, earn cheap applause by vilifying a former enemy, end quote, angered Korea. The U.S. State Department later clarified that Sherman's comments were not indicative of a change in the U.S. stance on the historical tensions in Northeast Asia. And perhaps another sign of worsening bilateral relations between Korea and Japan. Tokyo's Foreign Affairs Ministry's website has revised one of its phrases describing the bilateral relations, and this is raising some eyebrows. Arirang's Kwon So-ah has more.
An introductory section about the relationship between Korea and Japan on the website of Tokyo's Foreign Affairs Ministry used to say that Korea, an important neighbor, shares basic thoughts on freedom, democracy, and economic issues. But the ministry has taken out a chunk of the explanation, and now it just says that Korea is Japan's most important neighbor. Japan's foreign ministry said the change was made to make it similar to recently used expressions. In fact, 2 years ago, when Prime Minister Shinzo Abe talked about Korea-Japan relations, he used wording that was similar to what used to be on the homepage, while what he said during a policy meeting last month was more like the current expression.
Korea is our most important neighboring country, marking the normalization of diplomatic ties between Japan and Korea. We will continue our dialogue with Korea. We are always open to talks.
Japanese newspaper Asahi Shimbun reports that the change seems to show Japan's mistrust toward Korea. Korea's foreign ministry told Arirang News that it's inappropriate to comment on the significance of the change. But there is speculation that the removal of the words may have some greater meaning, as Abe has recently hinted he will take out references to Japan's war atrocities in a statement he will make in August, marking Japan's surrender at the end of World War II. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
In his address to U.S. legislators, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu called the emerging nuclear deal between the U.S. and Iran a very bad deal and warned it could bring about disastrous consequences. Our Park Ji-won has more.
Speaking before the U.S. Congress on Tuesday, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu stressed that the current nuclear negotiations between the U.S. and Iran will only help Iran develop nuclear weapons capability.
This deal has two major concessions. One, leaving Iran with a vast nuclear program. And two, lifting the restrictions on that program in about a decade.
The Israeli Prime Minister also warned the deal will spark a fresh nuclear arms race in the Middle East, threatening stability in the region. The speech received loud applause from Republican lawmakers, but Obama's fellow Democratic lawmakers expressed their discontent with the speech, and dozens boycotted the speech.
The invitation and the speech set a dangerous precedent whereby congressional leaders from one party can invite a foreign politician to publicly oppose the policies of the sitting president on the House floor.
President Obama defended the position of his administration, saying the Israeli Prime Minister didn't offer any viable alternatives.
If we're successful in negotiating, then in fact this will be the best deal possible to prevent Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon. Nothing else comes close.
Obama refused to meet Netanyahu as the Israeli Prime Minister is facing an upcoming election later this month, and the visit could be seen as interference. Despite the Israeli Prime Minister's rejection of the deal, the U.S. and Iran are continuing their nuclear talks in Switzerland. The U.S. hopes to prevent Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon in exchange for a gradual lifting of economic sanctions. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
Business partners face a one-day entry ban.
Digging deeper, getting to the bottom of stories that impact your life. Talking with you on air and online. Connecting you with experts on the world's most pressing issues. News and current affairs at its best. With Laah Hyun-kyung and Daniel Choy.
Arirang News.
Arirang News.
Arirang News.
On Early Edition at 6.
And now to the latest on President Park's foreign nation tour to the Middle East. On Tuesday local time, she held talks with the King of Saudi Arabia and signed a number of deals to expand the two countries' economic cooperation, for example, in the nuclear energy and healthcare sectors. Arirang's presidential office correspondent Choi Yu-sun has more.
Even though it's the biggest supplier of oil to Korea, Saudi Arabia is seeking new non-oil energy sources for its rising domestic power demand. Riyadh plans to build a dozen or more nuclear reactors that can generate 18 gigawatts of electricity by 2040. At Tuesday's summit between President Park Geun-hye and King Salman, Seoul and Riyadh signed a deal to jointly invest into studying the prospect of building at least two of Korea's small 100,000 kilowatt nuclear reactors in Saudi Arabia. When the reactor construction is finalized after 2018, Korea expects a $2 billion order and the world's first export of a small to mid-sized nuclear reactor. Nicknamed SMART for its name System Integrated Modular Advanced Reactor, the multifunctional reactor is about 1/10 the size of the more common type of reactor and can be used to generate electricity and desalinate seawater. President Park anticipated entering the global market with Saudi Arabia after constructing the reactors in the Arab country, then exporting them together to a third country. Korea also signed an agreement to share policies related to President Park's creative economy model in the form of innovation-based startups and centers to support them. Korea's SK Telecom, which runs one of the government's innovation centers, separately sealed a deal with a Saudi telecommunications company to export the conglomerate government startup institute cooperative model to the Arab nation.
Many state leaders have identified with our creative economy model, and they've expressed an interest in forging a creative economy partnership.
Korean healthcare firms will also participate in a Saudi pharmaceutical complex project, and a hospital plans to share its medical technology with a Saudi cancer center. Choi Yusan, Arirang News, Riyadh.
A much contested bill aimed at rooting out corruption passed a parliamentary hurdle yesterday, but many critics see a lot of holes in that law. For one, the law's broad scope may make the legislation unconstitutional. Our Kim Young-gil explains further.
A sweeping anti-corruption law will go into effect starting as early as September of next year, after an 18-month grace period. Under the new law, public figures with influence who receive money or gifts worth more than $912 as a bribe for a favor can be jailed for 3 years or fined up to 5 times the value of the money or gifts received. The list of people with influence includes government officials, lawmakers, reporters, and the faculty of public and private schools. But critics are already calling for revisions. One problem, they say, is that a person can be charged under both the anti-corruption law and criminal law.
The criminal statute allows for punishment of those who receive bribes in exchange for favors, and the anti-corruption law allows for the punishment of a person who takes money or gifts in the amount specified regardless of the existence of a favor. That could lead to a double punishment for a single person.
Another problem is that the law does not have a clause that allows for the punishment of those who asked for the favors or contributed the bribes. The law also strengthens the power of the prosecution, which has already been criticized for abusing its investigative power, especially where politicians or CEOs are concerned.
Prosecutors will be able to exploit their authority using the anti-corruption law, as it makes it easier for investigations to be conducted with little proof, since the law says a recipient can be punished even in the absence of a favor.
Some lawmakers have also raised concerns that the law is unfair because it does not include civic groups, which are seen as the largest interest groups in society. The law was originally aimed at rooting out corruption within the government, but has now been expanded to other people with public influence, such as teachers and journalists. The legal community has expressed concerns that the law is so broad and ambiguous that anyone could become the target of a criminal investigation. Kim Young-gil, Arirang News.
It's an established fact now that it's not easy for young people in Korea to find a decent job, but what could be more worrying at this point is that even if they do find a job, their income is rising at a rate that's in the 0% range. Here's Arirang's Shin Se-min.
Korea's younger generation, those in their 20s and 30s, are having a rough time in this period of slow growth. Youth unemployment is high, and those that have a job are finding that their pay isn't increasing much at all, especially compared to the salaries of Koreans approaching retirement. Statistics Korea says the income growth rate of younger Koreans hovered in the 0% range last year. The rate for people in their 50s? More like 7%. The slow income growth for the younger generation is also having another unwanted effect. They're having to take out more loans, with data showing the debt level of young homeowners rose over 11% last year. That's the highest in all age brackets. So it's even a troubling time for young Koreans in work, but a growing number of them don't even have a job. Last year saw hundreds of thousands of people to find work, but the youth unemployment rate actually had a record high of 9% in 2014. In other words, most of the newly created jobs were snapped up by workers in their 50s and 60s. And those young people with jobs often have to start their career on short-term contracts with little stability or upward potential. A recent survey shows nearly a fifth of young people who found work last year were on a contract of 1 year or less. Korea's finance minister Choi Kyung-hwan also addressed the unemployment issue on Wednesday. He said that while the official figures show more people are finding jobs, tackling youth unemployment is proving to be one of the nation's most pressing issues. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
The dream of becoming a haven for cutting-edge technology was once scrapped for Keumdan. That's an area in the western city of Incheon, but that dream may soon become a reality with an infusion of capital from Dubai. Arirang's Connie Kim has the story.
It was once bustling with construction, but Keumdan in Korea's western port city of Incheon has been lying idle with the sluggish real estate market. But there's welcome news for Keumdan as Dubai's government-owned fund is planning to invest $3.6 billion into the region. On Wednesday, the CEO of the Investment Corporation of Dubai and the mayor of Incheon signed a letter of intent promising to build a global business city in Keumdan. This comes on the back of President Park Geun-hye's trip to the Middle East, where she's seeking deeper economic cooperation with the region. Dubbed the Future City Project, the investment fund will transform Keumdan into a hub for information and communications technology and educational institutions. The $160 billion fund is also behind the construction of similar cities in Malta and India. Although previous deals between Korea and Dubai for developments in Jeju and Paju have been scrapped, Incheon is hopeful as the CEO will be traveling to the city to sign the Memorandum of Understanding in 2 weeks. Keumdan was reportedly chosen as the ideal location for the project, given its accessibility to Incheon International Airport and the Seoul metropolitan area. This will be the fund's first project in East Asia, and it's expected to generate more than $900 million for companies annually, breathing new life into local communities in the region. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
For 3 days, we're going to take an in-depth look into the world's second biggest economy, China. On the first part of the series, Kim Min-ji explains why China's economy has slowed down and what's being done to turn it around.
After decades of breakneck expansion, the Chinese economy wound down last year to its slowest pace in 24 years. It grew 7.4%, falling short of the government's target of 7.5%. At this year's major political meetings, China is expected to lay the groundwork for further reforms to aid this period of slowing growth.
China isn't expected to record double-digit growth anymore, given the size of its economy. Its exports and investment, which were once important growth drivers, are now seen as unsustainable.
China's exports have slumped in recent years due to sluggish global demand, and the country's heavy dependence on investments led to severe problems, including income inequality and an imbalance between consumption and investment. China describes the slowing momentum as the new normal, and efforts are underway to transform the economy to one that's driven by domestic consumption and services. The government has implemented various policies aimed at boosting consumption, such as accelerating urbanization, adopting universal health care, and easing regulations in the service sector.
China's consumption will start to rebound by 2020, according to our calculation. China's consumption will reach around 44% of GDP from the current 36%. By that time, Chinese consumption market will be $10.7 trillion.
Analysts see the slowdown in 2014 as a prelude to slower growth this year, as they don't foresee China's domestic-led growth to have an immediate impact. What's more, there are looming uncertainties for the global market, which is dependent on the Chinese economy for growth. And Korea is no exception, with China as its leading trade partner. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Moving on to other stories, the buzz surrounding Samsung Electronics lately has been focused on its mobile payment service, Samsung Pay. The company says its current plan is to target Korea and the U.S. rather than the global market. It's planning on sealing deals with 6 Korean credit card firms by the summer and will make the service available in the second half of this year. It has already inked deals with several U.S. payment companies, including Visa and MasterCard. The service platform will be featured on Samsung's recently unveiled Galaxy S6 and Galaxy S6 Edge smartphones. Korea and the U.S. have pledged to strengthen their cooperation in setting up communications policies. The head of Korea's communications regulator, Choi Sung-jun, met his American counterpart Tom Wheeler on the sidelines of the Mobile World Congress currently underway in Barcelona, where they agreed to push for policies on net neutrality, also referred to as the open internet. This involves ensuring that governments and internet service providers allow the public to freely access data or services on the internet. With the concept of the Internet of Things and big data becoming more prevalent, the two countries also agreed on the rising need to protect online privacy.
And now we take you to the Mobile World Congress in Spain, where a wide range of innovative products are being showcased.
From wearables and Internet of Things devices to 5G platforms, 1,000 times faster than the current network we're on, it's all there. And our Son Jung-in takes us there.
Hello, Smart Bike.
Hello.
Right turn signal on.
A rider controls his motorcycle with just a simple verbal command. He interacts with the bike to check his speed and asks for directions during his ride. This is all possible thanks to Internet of Things technology and a mobile chipset in his helmet.
And using our Intel Edison to add into the bike that communicates to the Intel Edison that's inside the helmet, enabling an Internet of Things and interaction between the bike and the motorcycle rider.
That's just one of the gadgets on display at this year's Mobile World Congress in Barcelona. This air purifier is another. It sends information about the air quality inside a room to a smartphone in real time. This smart purification system integrated with the Internet of Things is able to measure the air quality on its own and turn the air purifier on when necessary. Experts say that in order to make devices like these commercially viable, what's needed is a new generation of mobile telecommunications technology that's faster and can deal with an enormous amount of data.
IoT is real. It is here today. And we need our networks to support this huge growth that is coming.
Korea's 3 domestic mobile carriers are playing a leading role in promoting the IoT market at the event in Barcelona. And they're showcasing their latest 5G platforms with a heavy emphasis on the fact that the network is 1,000 times faster than the existing 4G LTE networks. Son Jung-in, Arirang News.
Well, here in Korea, the sun was up, but it served little other than ornamental purposes because it was not really that warm, freezing cold with strong winds, right?
That's right, and we even had a report of a fire in the Gangwon-do province that was hard to put out because of the strong wind. For details, let's turn to our Michelle Park at the Weather Center. Michelle.
Good evening, guys. Currently, we have clear skies nationwide with the air quality at normal. However, there is cold air moving in from the north that's causing the strong cold wind to blow. Now, as you can see where it's purple, there are even places where the wind is blowing at about 10 meters per second, which is considered to be very windy. And meanwhile, Seoul and the surrounding regions are experiencing winds that are twice as strong as well. So watch out for any fires, manage all the facilities, and make sure to bundle up. Now looking at the rest of the week, this cold spell is expected to ease as of Friday afternoon, and the weather will continue to get mild throughout the weekend under mostly clear, sunny skies. Now let's have a look at the readings for tomorrow. So we'll start off the Thursday morning at -4 and gets up to 6 in the afternoon. Meanwhile, the southern cities such as Daegu and Busan will both top to 8 degrees. Moving over to other regions, Jeju Island will get up to 6, Dokdo hits down to 2, while Bangkok will be sunny at -5 degrees. Well, that's all for now, Michelle Park, and I hope you have a wonderful evening.
Thanks for that, Michelle. That does it for us. Have a great start to your day or a safe drive home. This has been Daniel Choy.
And I'm Laah Hyun-kyung from us and the rest of the team in Seoul. Thanks for watching. We'll be back at the same time tomorrow. Goodbye for now.